Thanks, Brandis. Competing plans for police oversight are coming to a head in Chicago. Yesterday, at long last, Mayor Lori Lightfoot introduced her plan for civilian oversight of the Chicago Police Department to the City Council. But activists say it's a watered-down version of their own plan, and that plan is called Empowering Communities for Public Safety, or ECPS. That plan will also go in front of City Council next month. And joining us now with more are Tamer Abouzeid, staff attorney for CAIR-Chicago and legal counsel to the Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Repression, and Desmond Yancey, director of community organizing at the Inner City Muslim Action Network and spokesperson for the Grassroots Alliance for Police Accountability, or GAPA. We did invite Mayor Lori Lightfoot and Chicago Police Superintendent David Brown to join us for tonight's program. They both declined, but we will hear from Alderman Chris Taliaferro during this conversation in a moment. He chairs City Council's Public Safety Committee. We do thank you both for being here, gentlemen, and let's very quickly at the top run down what these proposals are. So first, with Mayor Lightfoot's plan, it creates an elected board that could review but not veto CPD policy. That board would also recommend applicants for police superintendent, but it doesn't have the final say on hiring and firing. The board would also recommend a budget proposal for the department. Now, the Empowering Communities for Public Safety plan. This plan would give an elected board final say on policy disputes between CPD and oversight agencies. It would also hire and fire the COPA administrator, and the ordinance would also create a binding referendum in 2022 that, if approved by Chicagoans, would give an elected board the power to hire and fire the police superintendent. So, Tamer Abouzeid, you've called the mayor's proposal a watered-down version of your own proposal. Where do you believe the mayor's proposal falls short?
Oh, I think it falls short in many places. I think what she has essentially done is copy and paste some portions of our proposal and then go on to remove any real authority or power and call it her own. I'm not really sure why it took 7 months. I actually want to correct something you said. Her proposal does not, in fact, create this elected board. The elected board is actually nominated by district councils, except she also does not create a format to have these district council elections. And so the board will end up being selected by her and the Public Safety Committee until some kind of election is decided on in the future. So she actually does not set up an election. She also takes away any power, like you said, to hire and fire for cause the COPA chief administrator. And she takes away the power to be able to decide on policy. These are things that have been named as essential by most researchers into police accountability. Without power over policy, a commission simply does
so
not.
Basically, with her proposal, there's a roundabout way of saying that she would still have the final say over this board and then have it be fully elected at some future date to be determined. Desmond Yancey, your proposal, your and Tamer's proposal that you've jointly agreed on, it would have the power to enact policy or to come up with policy for CPD. So, for instance, say the CPD had to enact a new foot pursuit policy. How would this process work?
So the process would work where with the commission having identified the need for the policy, the commission will be staffed with experts, with people who understand this sort of work. They come up with a policy, worked with the Chicago Police Department to determine a policy that's safe for all people involved, and then go through a process that ultimately, if the commission agrees that this is the policy that should that our city deserves, then that's the policy that gets passed. But one thing I want to touch on with related to what Tamer said earlier, I think it's important to understand that what the mayor's proposal does, it isn't clear of the intention to actually create community involvement through the elections. To have an ordinance that gets passed where she picks 5 of the 7 members of the commission, and then the commission decides on this process for the district council elections, and the district council elections can't take place without action in Springfield. So to wait on Springfield to pass legislation to allow for these elections to happen, it just seems disingenuous that the mayor's intention to have community involvement and oversight of the police department.
It seems convoluted and perhaps a little bit of passing of the ball. Tamer Abouzeid, is there a fair criticism here that, say, the final commission, which would be 7 members, is made up of folks that don't have law enforcement backgrounds, that they might not have that perspective of walking in the shoes of a police officer when coming up with policy that impacts public safety and policing?
No, I don't think that's a fair criticism at all. I think the commission should be made up of community members. When you want someone to oversee what your government does, you're not hiring those same people to police themselves. What we want is accountability, and who should you be accountable to? You should be accountable to the people of the city. And so the idea that you're supposed to have law enforcement policing law enforcement, well, at the end of the day, we've tried that for decades, and we know that it does not work.
And that doesn't mean, the current police board isn't necessarily made up with folks that have law enforcement backgrounds. Over the years, some of them have, but most of them, as I see it, have not. Let's hear from Alderman Chris Taliaferro, as we mentioned, the chair of the Public Safety Committee, on that notion of accountability.
You do need someone to be held accountable for the actions of the superintendent and the actions of our police department. That will always rest solely with the mayor as the chief executive of the city. And so given that responsibility and given those obligations to the residents of the city, I think it's very important that she be able to select a candidate from the list that's provided to her.
All right, so the alderman there, Desmond Yancey, is making the argument for the mayor retaining the power to hire and fire the police superintendent. What about that point that the buck stops with the mayor, that's the best system for accountability because the mayor then wears the hat if things are not going well with violence and with the police department?
Well, I mean, it's a system that hasn't worked yet, right? The mayor's been accountable to the citizens of the city of Chicago. The police chief has been accountable to her and previous mayors. And we just continue to have the same problems with our police department. We've got decades-long issues with the way that our communities are policed. And it's important that we do something that is different. It's important that the community have some say-so in how we're policed. And it's important that, we're going to go back to the mayor and before she was mayor and head of the Police Accountability Task Force, where in her document, she talked about the creation of a civilian oversight body and that body should be created with the community input.
This was the task force that she chaired that the former mayor, Rahm Emanuel, put her in charge of. Go ahead.
Right, but she said that the community should decide those powers. The ordinance that she's put forth doesn't have the community voice in it, hasn't been vetted by the community, because if she had, she'd have a different ordinance in front of us. I think it's important that in order for the transformation to happen that we need, that the community and residents of the city of Chicago use their voice. And her ordinance just doesn't provide for that.
Tamer Abouzeid, as part of your proposal, you would also put a referendum to voters in the next city election to just make them weigh in on this question, a binding referendum. Should this commission have the power to hire and fire the superintendent? So you're putting that up to voters. Why do that instead of bake it into your proposal?
Because democracy. We've heard from multiple people, and there is a genuine good faith split on whether people want the commission to pick the superintendent or the mayor. Now, we want the people of Chicago to decide, and that's how it should be, because any power the mayor has, any power the commission has, comes from the people. What we also have to remember is that the mayor keeps saying that she wears the jacket, but the truth is, if the voters of Chicago decide that she should not be hiring the superintendent, then the people of Chicago will not punish her for what the superintendent does. The people of Chicago are not stupid. They will not take away her ability to hire and fire a superintendent and then blame her for what that superintendent does.
So leave that aspect up to the voters. So let's be clear for viewers, this oversight panel would oversee the already existing police board. It would also oversee COPA, the Civilian Office of Police Accountability. 22 districts here in this board. Initially, you would have 3 people elected in each district, so that's 66 people to then pick the final 7 people. Are you worried here about layers and layers of bureaucracy on top of bureaucracy? And Desmond, that's for you.
Sure. No, I don't think so. I mean, democracy can be a little bit messy sometimes, but when we're talking about the challenges that exist in reforming this police department. And let's be clear, like the reason why we want to reform the police department is because public safety is important to everybody. And communities that don't feel safe when the police come to their door are not going to talk to the police when they're victims of crime. It's that simple. And so having this community voice, having this opportunity for people within the district to engage outside of the police department initially, to have conversations about how their community should be policed, what specific issues they have in their community that need to be addressed, and then to be able to engage with the police department. Like, that's where the trust needs to come from, because for the last 50 years and even beyond, that trust hasn't come from the police department towards the community. Many of our communities just felt more terrorized and occupied by the police than served and protected by it.
All
so
right,
we seek to change that.
And as we mentioned, this is going to come to a head. We think next month, as the Public Safety Committee Chairman, Alderman Chris Taliaferro, has said that these bills are going to have a hearing. So we'll see where this lands. And for now, our thanks to Tamer Abouzeid and Desmond Yancey.